welcome to this conversation brought to you by White House Custom Color. I'm Jed Toffer. Today I'm here with Jared Platt. Hey, Jared.
Hey, how are you doing?
How's it going, man?
Good.
It's good to finally meet you. I've seen you for a very long time.
You know, my favorite thing about interviews is that you always, like, we've been sitting here chatting for a couple minutes, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, Jared, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. How are you?
As if we just stumbled across each other.
I just walked into this room. We are in a hotel room.
Yes.
Like, I'm looking at two very unmade beds right now, and I'm like,
they're
what?
Sort of made.
Who's been in those beds?
They're kind of made. I sleep in this one, and my wife sleeps in that one, like the Flintstones.
Very nice.
I'm sorry I wasn't able to procure a better room. We have a nice view.
No,
though.
this is nice. I got a nice view of the parking lot. It's good. Love
and
it.
The mountains are there.
And the the airport.
Yes, that is the airport.
And unfinished buildings. I love it.
I don't know what that
Vegas
what that
is not a beautiful place.
We are in Vegas for WPPI 2018 for anyone that is wondering. And Jared and I have never spoken to each other before 6 minutes ago.
Correct.
So it does seem a little disingenuous to just sit down and say
hello. How are you?
But for the sake of formalities that are to some degree required, could you tell me who you are? Because I really don't know.
Yes, my name is Jared Platt. I'm from Arizona.
From Arizona.
As though you didn't know that I was Jared Platt.
I know you're Jared. I know you're from Arizona.
No, I'm from Arizona, and I'm a wedding and lifestyle photographer. I basically photograph people. Anything to do with people. I photograph weddings and portraits and editorial portraits and political events.
And you have for a while. You're not a newbie.
Yeah, for a long time. I've never had a real job. So, like, I got out of college, and by the time I got out of college, I already had a business because I had been photographing in college.
Okay.
And so it was I just started taking pictures. And I taught college at, various points throughout the last 10 years or whatever, 20 years. But yeah, I had a career by the time I was out of college, so I didn't get a job. I just started working for myself. And I think I had 3 jobs at one point, 3 full-time jobs. I was originally, when I first got out of college, I worked at a photo studio, and I was building my own business. And so it was a commercial photo studio. It was building my business on the weekends, and then it was also teaching college.
All at the same time.
All full time.
Yeah.
So it was like I worked 40 hours a week here, 40 hours a week there, and 40 hours a week there, which really turned out to be like, I literally
a lot.
So we're in this hotel room, and you've got one bed for your wife and one bed for you.
Right.
Well, I had a room in my house where I had my computer, and then I had a bed in that room.
Yeah.
And that was back before Lightroom existed. Yeah. And so I was shooting with a Nikon. And the Nikon D1X, I think is what it was called.
I remember that camera. Yeah.
It was a horrible camera. And it had a really bad chip on it. That was back when they thought the CCD was going to win out.
Yeah.
And it was like really magenta, and the greens were like almost looked like they were that glowy underwater moss, so your grass was horrible.
Radioactive.
That was
greens,
horrible.
Yeah.
So, but I had to use I refused. I've never shot a JPEG in my life, and so I refused to shoot RAW. Mm-hmm. I refused to shoot JPEG.
Right.
I always shot RAW, which meant that Photoshop didn't know what a RAW was. Mm-hmm. Bridge didn't know what a RAW was. Mm-hmm. The only way I could look at it was with the Nikon editor. It was Nikon
their
professional.
Own proprietary software.
Yes.
But was that... Kodak's was really good, I remember. Was theirs really good?
No, theirs was horrible.
Theirs was bad. Okay.
It was very bad.
Okay.
And literally, you would look at each image one at a time, and what you could do is you could then say, process this set of images the way I did this one.
Yeah.
Right? But you would have to first choose the image, and then you would say, process this one and the rest of this folder. So what I had to do is every night when I got back from a wedding, I would have to look at my images, and I would have to put them in folders, and the folders were named thus. Are you ready? +1 stop exposure minus green, 0.5. Then the other folder would be -1 stop exposure plus green, 0.5.
All the variables.
There would be like 300 folders. And then I would tell it to process them. And then I would have to, but it would only process one batch at a time. So I would, and it took like 12 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
To process that little folder of 12 images. It's about a minute per
image. Yeah.
And so I would start the process and I would set an alarm based on how long I thought it would take. And I would go to sleep on that little bed.
And then wake up like 11 minutes later.
11
all
minutes,
through the night.
Correct.
And do the next one. And
then
do
the next one and do the next one. By the end of the night, I had gotten maybe 8 hours of sleep, but at 12 minutes of time.
It's amazing. It's amazing what we used to do. Like everything you're saying, I get it. But did you not? Because I think when we initially started shooting Canon, no, Kodak, and then Canon and Fuji there at the beginning. We never did Nikon.
Right.
And I think it was because I was hearing the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, it was horrible.
You should have switched.
I did.
Okay.
So
at some point,
at one point, maybe 6 months after I started doing this.
Yeah.
But the beauty is that trained my mind. I can go to sleep in an instant anywhere. It's almost like I'm a narcoleptic.
You have that now. You have that ability.
Yeah.
Okay.
But okay. So here's my thoughts on superpowers.
This is great.
A superpower can either be a superpower or it can be a problem. So think about this. Superman has the superpower to fly,
He
right?
does, yes.
But it wouldn't be considered a superpower if he couldn't turn it off. Then he would just be floating around.
Okay.
Right? It would be anti-gravity and he'd be like, dang it, I wish I could walk.
Can't get on the ground.
Right. That's not a power.
Okay.
Right? That's a
It's
problem.
like an ailment, right.
That's an ailment. So someone with narcolepsy, that's a problem, right? That's an ailment. But if you can just sleep instantaneously if you want to, that's a superpower.
Oh, I see now.
So I have the superpower of narcolepsy.
And so that's a thing for you. You can.
Yeah, I can go to sleep anytime, anywhere. If you said, Jared, go to sleep, like you can't command me to, but if you told me, hey, you want to take a nap, I'd be out in a minute.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's super fascinating, and I'm a bit envious because I have trouble sleeping.
My wife has trouble sleeping.
My wife
she
does not.
Hates it when I just fall
As
asleep.
do I.
Yeah.
And I say, how do you do it? She said one time, I just flip the switch.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't have a switch.
You know what that switch is called?
No.
It's another superpower.
Well, good for you guys.
The switch.
I
The switch is called apathy. All you have to do is just say, I am apathetic at this point of anything in my life.
She can do that. Though.
See, there you go.
She cannot care.
That's right. Anybody who can go to sleep on command has apathy at their command. Like I can care about things intensely.
Right.
Like for instance, when I'm talking about something like photos or whatever, I care intensely.
Right.
But if I decide that it's time to not care, just like that, I will turn that off.
This has turned into an absolutely fascinating
so
conversation. Golf, right?
Everybody else around me is like throwing their clubs, breaking their clubs, swearing. And I hit a bad shot and I'm just like, all right, it's time to be apathetic. I don't care.
Because otherwise you would be
Otherwise I'd be throwing
upset.
my clubs. Yeah.
It's time to be apathetic.
Yeah. You just have to have the apathy superpower.
Okay.
That's my chief superpower.
Well, I'm curious.
But it wouldn't be a superpower if I couldn't turn it off. If I was just always apathetic,
that would be horrible.
Then I'd be a Generation Xer.
Right. No,
a millennial.
Below.
A millennial.
I'm X.
What do they call
You're
that?
probably X.
I don't know what I am.
Well, I don't know. How
I'm
old
generation grew up on a ranch.
Grew up. I read you grew. That's a pivot. I read you grew up in a town with more cows than people.
Yes.
In Arizona.
In Arizona.
I didn't know. That sounds like Wisconsin.
No, Arizona is a widely varied state. We have almost every ecosystem on the planet, except for ocean.
Right.
We have tundra. We have
Where's tundra?
Up north. It's not cold like it is up like in Alaska, but it's the same type of plants. The same. We have high desert. We have mountains that are above the tree line, so there's no trees. Is there
rainforest?
We have wetlands.
Really?
Yeah. Not rainforest, but wetlands.
Huh.
Yeah. So I grew up in northern Arizona where it's like, it's still fairly sparse,
Right.
but there's grass and the cows just, so you know how everybody has those little step counters on their wrist, right?
Yeah.
And they walk from McDonald's to McDonald's and they think they earned their McDonald's, right?
You may or may not be talking about me. I don't have the step counter though. I just do it in my mind.
25 steps.
That's done.
That's a
Big Mac right
Big
there.
Mac. So the cows in northern Arizona have to walk from one bite to the next.
Because the grass
is like in little patches. So they would eat and then they walk and then they eat.
What's
so
up there, Sedona? Where are you at up there?
Sedona is kind of mid Arizona.
Okay.
Northern Arizona is like up by Four Corners. So we're almost to Colorado.
Oh yeah. Right. Four Corners.
See,
I know that from Breaking Bad.
There you go. Four Corners.
That's how I know about Four Corners.
That's right. The meth capital. We grow cows and meth. That's
very lucrative.
Yeah.
The
cows transport the meth.
It works better than an RV.
That's an expensive cow.
Oh my goodness.
Have we talked about photography yet?
Well, I think we're supposed to talk about all these are a great precursor for what we're supposed to discuss, or what we planned on discussing, which is why it matters. Right? And first of all, my question when I see why it matters, I'm assuming it's photography, why it matters.
Yes. Photography, why it matters.
Right. That's really the topic. Why does it matter?
I've been asking myself that ever since I became a photographer, because I have to justify why I'm doing this, right?
Yeah.
And everybody does. And everybody, the other thing is everybody has to justify why they're charging someone to do that for them. And my dad is the chief example of someone who doesn't understand. So I'll go, my dad will call me and be like, hey, you want to go golfing? Because that's all he likes to do is golf. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, no, I'm going to be doing a job. Where are you doing the job? Oh, I'm flying to Italy. Why are you flying to Italy? Well, I'm photographing a wedding. Why are you flying? Don't they have photographers over there? Why would
just me?
Why would someone pay you to go to Italy to take pictures? And that's the chief question. Why in the world am I able to charge someone to fly me to Italy and shoot their wedding?
But isn't one of the answers because I'm really good, Dad?
No, he doesn't see that. He's a lawyer. He's like, what? It took the longest time for him to recognize that. I don't even think he knows what I do personally.
He's not aware.
He's like, I don't understand what my son does.
He goes to Italy sometimes.
I think he thinks I might be a spy or a drug dealer or something. Because why would anyone pay you to take pictures of the wedding? And then sometimes he'll ask how much, how much are you making or whatever. And I'll tell him, he's like, why in the world would anyone pay you that much money to take a picture? So the question is, how is it that we live on this art of photography, and why does it matter that someone get a good picture versus, because here's the thing is anybody can get someone to take a picture. That we all have iPhones,
right?
Why is it, this is the real question, why is it that every bride in the world doesn't recognize that every friend has a camera and they could just have 100 people taking pictures of them, and one of those is going to turn out okay and be in focus, and they could print it up, and that would be the end of it, and it would cost them $0.
Or why, despite the fact that they do or could recognize that, they still choose
right? That's the real
to
question.
hire you.
Why would they hire me when they can document, quote unquote, the event? They can get memories of the event, but yet they still choose to pay a significant sum of money, either 10 or 20%, sometimes 30% of the entire
budget,
cost of the budget goes to photography, and you wonder, why did they do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, you wonder. I've never thought about it until right now.
Okay, so
quite honestly, not in these terms,
right? I mean, because really, a picture is a picture is a picture, and everybody, I can tell what you look like by an iPhone picture of you or by a beautiful $5,000 camera taking a picture of you.
But you're not discounting the fact that even though a picture is a picture is a picture, that some pictures are much better than others?
It depends on what the purpose of the picture is. So a picture that describes you enough that the cop could get you and arrest you.
Okay.
That is a quality picture, right?
Sure, to the cop.
To the cop. It's a quality picture. Right. It has accomplished its job.
Right.
I had a professor in college who once would tell us, he would show us a picture and say, what is this picture? Okay. And he would give us classifications. So everybody close your eyes and think of a picture. Okay. And I'm going to give you different classifications for that picture, and you tell me what that picture is. So just choose a picture. It doesn't matter. It could be from a magazine or anything. Just in your mind's eye, think of a picture that you remember. Okay. It could be art. It could be documentary. It could be a snapshot, or it could be like a portrait. Okay. Say. And he would show us a picture and say, what is this? And then he would ask us to classify that picture. And, you know, some people were like, well, it's just a snapshot. It's just a snapshot. And then other people were like, well, I think it's a documentary or whatever. And he'd say, it just depends on where it is. If it's on a wall, it's art. If it's on a bedside table, it's a portrait. Mm-hmm. If it's in a magazine, it's a documentary. Mm-hmm. And if it's in your grandma's wallet, it's a snapshot. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it would be appropriately placed in all of those, and it could look like it was art if it was on a wall in a mat. You know, if White House sent me a picture, the same picture as a canvas, and I hung it on a wall, you'd say, oh, that's art. Yeah. But if White House sends me a 4x6 and I just shove it in my pocket and I show it to people and it's all crinkled up.
Of the same
picture.
Image.
It's a snapshot. So it's contextual. So then back to our discussion then, the quality of a photo is contextual. If your purpose is to make sure you make the correct arrest of the correct person, then contextually that photograph from an iPhone that tells you what someone looks like is a good photograph. But if our plan is to put it on a canvas on a wall, the quality of that photo needs to be better so that someone doesn't look and think, wow, that's the crappiest piece of art I've ever seen.
Right. Yes.
They'll still classify it as art.
Yeah.
But they'll look at it and think, you really spent too much money printing a piece of art that's that bad. Right. And so then the beauty of the art and how rich the colors are, or whether it's in focus, or whether it's got, a good composition or whatever, that kind of stuff matters when the context changes for the photograph.
So the context demands, is it fair to say then that context demands quality depending on?
Context is what determines how much effort needs to be put into the quality of the photograph. Okay. And so that's why a wedding, someone is much more willing to pay for a professional to be there to make beautiful art, because they know that contextually they're going to put this in a book. They're going to put this on a wall because they already know what the use of the photograph is.
Right. And because it's coming from a contextual standpoint, a wedding. Yes.
Right. And because it's a wedding that can only happen once. And what if people don't get what needs to be done?
We're hanging out in my backyard with the same people.
Same people.
And we're just barbecuing.
All iPhones is perfect.
We don't care.
That's right.
Because I'm not thinking to myself, oh, this event needs to be documented in the same way a wedding does.
Well, interestingly enough, today, every event in everybody's life is documented as intensely as a wedding. Like I'm
sorry that I'm laughing, but
you go to eat, go out to eat with your friends and watch how many people pull out their stupid phone and take a picture of what they're eating, or a picture of the sign of the place that they document things beyond, to the point that it's literally they're just vomiting out photographs of whatever.
I think that's true. And I think the issue that I take issue with that, because I don't really do that. I'm more of a voyeur. I'm not an exhibitionist. I don't post a lot of stuff. Yeah. But I creep on people all the time.
Right. So you're interested in what so-and-so's eating, not what you're eating. You don't want other people to know your cheesecake fetish. But
That's an interesting way to put it. I really don't care what people are eating. I don't. But I do want to know what they're doing and where they're going. That's not entirely true. I think I just lied.
Photograph we were talking about that the police need from you.
There might be some. There might be
validity.
You can take a photo of me because it might come in handy later on.
Hold on, let me take a picture.
It's fascinating. You're like, a lot of things on my brain are firing right now because I haven't thought about it like this before. On one hand, there's a piece of me that's triggered and thinking, I feel like he's putting down what we do, but you're not. I know you're not.
No.
It's almost the opposite of that.
Yeah, it elevates us. But here's the thing. The important thing to understand is how important photography in itself is.
That's really the crux.
It's incredibly important. In fact, so when I was in college, I studied under a guy named Bill Jay, who's now dead, but he was pretty like, the world over, if you said, who are the photo historians that matter in 19th and 20th century photography? He's one of the top 5 in the world. And he was at Arizona State University. Mm-hmm. He had friendships with some of the most important, greatest photographers. Like, I would just see photographers, amazing photographers. Josef Kutelka would just come around.
Like those buddies.
Yeah, so one of my favorite guys was this guy named David Hearn. He's a Magnum photographer. He's a Welsh photographer. And at one point he said, I don't understand why photographers want to be called artists. Like, why do we try so hard? Do you know that until 1960-ish, 1950, around that time frame, photography was a science. And if you went to school and studied photography, you were in the science college. You were not in the art college.
Is that right?
It wasn't until the mid-1900s that we actually turned that and it became an art. So it's very recent that people as photographers have thought of themselves as artists. Even the early photographers, like 1800s, they were scientists. And they were documenting, pyramids so people could see the pyramids. They weren't photographing them as art. They were photographing them as, hey, here's something that you'll never see that you need to, because scientifically and historically this is important. But I'm just a scientist. I'm just wandering around with glass plates and coating them with a bunch of goo and exposing them and then taking back and printing them for you. And so these are scientists. So it's only recently that we became artists. And his point was, David Hearn's point was, why on earth are photographers so hell-bent on the idea that I want to be called an artist? Because we're so much more important than artists. Artist is a step down from photography. Artist is like low grade.
Really?
Photography is so much more important than art, because think about this. How many girls are going to become bulimic after seeing a painting of a skinny girl?
I don't know.
None. But when they look at photographs that have been photoshopped, or even photographs of truly skinny girls, they want to be that. Why? Because the photograph is real to them. They see it and they want to be that. Yeah. Think about this. How many wars have been changed as a course because of a painting or a sculpture? Mm-hmm. None. Mm-hmm. But a photograph of a little girl running naked with napalm on her from a battle or from a burning city, that changes people's opinion about war.
The first thing you think is that happened.
That happened.
Right.
But a painting, you're like, oh, someone's just kind of making that up.
Or painted that, right. And
I can think of plenty of paintings of wars and things in Spain. Like, for instance, Goya paints a painting of some soldiers shooting a bunch of people, unarmed, innocent civilians. Well, maybe they weren't innocent civilians. Maybe they were, dissidents or whatever. But anyway, that painting by Goya of a massacre that occurred in Spain before photography existed, that probably, made people think a little bit.
Right.
But how do those people know that event really occurred?
Right. like
But
that.
but if you have a photograph of it,
Because no matter what, it was an artist's interpretation.
correct.
Whereas a photograph takes that out of the equation.
That's right. At least people think
Right.
it takes it out of the equation.
Right.
Most people looking at a photograph do not question the photograph, which is what makes photography more powerful and more important than art. As an artist, I'm just making something that makes people feel. But as a photographer, I can have multiple levels. I can have a level of feeling, I can have a level of beauty, and I can have that all-important level of reality.
Thinking.
That's what thinking. And people react to photography in a completely different way than they will react to a painting or a sculpture or anything like that.
So what part of this gets lost on is the fact that everyone has an iPhone in their pocket now, has it hurt things overall considering what you're saying, or has it helped things overall considering what you're saying? Because taking photographs is just like a very normal thing for everybody now. And not just taking them, but being able to post them so that everyone else can see them.
What
so
it's
is that
done
a good
is
thing?
It's a good thing in that people understand. I think it's a good thing for a kid to understand that they can manipulate a photograph, because then they know that all photographs can be manipulated. I think that's good for truth. That's important. But when it comes to what has photography, the ubiquitous nature of iPhones and cameras and small cameras, what has that done for photography? I think it's just made a lot of noise. But if you think about it, our entire lives are based in imagery. Like, we look around. In fact, because I, teach and I have, presets and workshops and stuff that I sell online and things like that, I have come to realize that no one anymore reads. It's all visuals. It's all memes, and you gotta, in order for me to get people to understand to click a button, I can't have any kind of text to tell them to click a button. Right. I have to have like a photograph that reminds them to click the button, because people just don't read, right? And I think it's because imagery is such a great way of communicating that we now get our concepts from driving by, the billboard goes by, and we get a feeling for what that company wants me to do. Right? And we've just gotten so used to that way of ingesting information imagery-wise instead of textually. Instead of reading a newspaper, we flip through and we look for the most interesting picture on our news feed, and then we click on that one, and that's what we learn. That's what we learned from. So, but I think what's happened as a result of all of this imagery is that it's just noise. Now it makes it harder for a great photograph to rise to the top because there's so much noise. And now people just can't see. And then all of a sudden, whoa, that's a great photograph.
But how often does that happen with you? Because I also feel like, because of the noise, I feel as though I'm also exposed to a lot more great photographs than I'm exposed to a lot more junk.
Yeah.
Too. But I'm also exposed to a lot more great ones. And for me, maybe this is a confession, I'm not impressed as much as I used to be. Correct. Maybe am I jaded?
No, it's just that you've been we all have more opportunities to see a lot of great imagery. And so great imagery that was great 10 years ago is now mediocre because, I was walking through New York City.
It's like a bell curve.
Yes. I was walking through New York City after a workshop that I taught there, and I was wandering around, and I started looking, and I thought, my gosh, everybody in the city is beautiful.
What?
Think about it.
I am.
You walk in the right area of New York City, and everybody's wearing amazing, and maybe I was just in the right district, and it was like the fashion district or whatever.
And you're in a really good mood.
but I'm looking around, and I'm like, there are so many good-looking people around me, wearing, dressed to the nines, nice beautiful clothes, outfits, and they were good-looking people, and I just thought, in a world of so many good-looking people, good-looking is not enough.
Yeah.
What do you do? Like, I would hate to live in New York City with that many good-looking people in there. That would be rough.
Yeah.
You would really have to rise above all those people somehow.
To stand out.
You know, like you'd have to wear a top hat or something just to stand out.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens to photography. You get, you can have a lot of great-looking photography, great, beautiful photography, but because so much more is available to you, because you can look at more of it and you can see more of it, the people who really rise to the top have to be incredible.
And what is that? How does that manifest? What do you have to do?
Well, that's contextual.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like I have gotten really into aerial photography with drones and stuff.
Okay.
Like I haven't taken a lot of them, but I really am fascinated by the shapes and stuff that are made. And so I've been on Instagram, I've been following people who do that. And man, I'm fascinated by these shapes. It's almost like back in the early 1900s, a guy named Alfred Stieglitz he did what he called equivalent photography. And he photographed clouds. That's all he photographed, is just clouds. I mean, he photographed other things, but he did this series called The Equivalents, and it was all clouds. And his point is it was the best way to study shapes without having some kind of intellectual discussion. Because if you take a picture of walls or take a picture of cities or whatever, there's some intellectual thing being communicated. Like if I take a picture of the New York City skyline, then there's a different communication because someone's like, oh, that's missing the Twin Towers. And then all of a sudden there's intellectual information and then we remember 9/11 and blah, 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 blah. Right. And so clouds have no meaning.
Right.
And so he could take these amazing shapes and play with shapes with no intellectual discussions.
They're dynamic. They're always changing. They're temporary,
right?
Et cetera, et cetera.
And I found myself interested in these aerial photographies because they're more shape oriented and they're just beautiful, but they have no intellectual meaning to them. Right. And so it's all based on that contextual, like, who are you and what are you looking for? So you might not be interested in that. Maybe you're interested in, architectural photography or something. So you're going to respond to one thing and I'm going to respond to another. And that's the democratization of photography these days, because everybody has a platform, is wonderful. The fact that anybody can get their work out there and they don't have to go through some kind of a publisher. Right. I can go and make a book in what? I mean, you guys print books faster than I've ever seen anybody print a book. It's crazy. Yeah. Like anytime I'm in a rush and I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to do this and I need this now. White House is like the first place to go because I can get it. I'm in Phoenix. Right? I can get a book from you faster than I could drive down and find one in like downtown Phoenix. Right. I'll order something and it's there like a day and a half later. I'm like, what in the world?
It's pretty sick.
It's voodoo, actually.
We have a time machine.
Yeah. So anyway, but the fact that someone can get out to the world like that or print a book so quickly.
That's the advantage.
It's amazing.
The disadvantage is that everybody can.
That's right.
Yes?
Yes, that's the disadvantage. Or that's the opportunity, because now we all have to rise above that.
Yeah, is that like looking at the glass half full? So
yes,
I have an opportunity to get even better, right? Because everybody else is in the game.
Everybody's in the game, so I got to do something interesting.
In order to stand out, I got to bring my A game because everybody else is here.
That's right. And in professional wedding photography today, there are so many new people because they can, because the cameras are easier to use and they're better at auto focusing and better at auto exposure. Right. When I was shooting film, there was hardly anyone in the business.
Right. Oh, I know.
Because no one knew how to do it. Yeah. But now everybody knows how to do it because the computer's doing it for them.
A lot of it, yeah.
So you got to stand out there.
And you don't have to worry about all of those issues.
That's right.
That were just common. Like, this is just how it worked. Right. Back then at the advent of digital, essentially, when nobody else could help you. Like, you and I wouldn't even have been able to really sit down and help each other, even though we needed it, because we didn't know much about what was going on, and neither did the people that were supposed to maybe at the time. It was so hard for me to find somebody that really had answers. You know what I mean? And part of it was because they didn't exist. Like, there might have been some better solutions for what you were trying to accomplish, but they were few and far between and hard to find.
Right. Now you've got, I think I can think of, so Adobe Lightroom is kind of the gold standard. That's what everybody uses. But I can think of 15 other solutions as well. Sure. That other people can use. Right. And so there's a lot of ways to do stuff. It's easier to do stuff. There's computers that are doing it for you. Yep. I mean, it's getting to the point now where Adobe, with their Sensei in the cloud, this computer learning, it's amazing. Like, they're getting to the point where they can look at a photograph and auto expose it because they know what it's of.
What it should be, right?
They're like, that's a wedding dress, so it should stay white. And so incredible. Then they auto adjust it based on the fact that they know there's a wedding dress in the photograph. Like, that's the kind of crazy that's going on. Yeah. So with that kind of ability, it has become it's become imperative for us to rise to that challenge and be better. And here's where we'll wrap it around to the original discussion point that we had. Why does that matter then? Why does my client buy a wedding package for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 when they could have somebody who's just learning, or they could have a friend take their picture or whatever, or they could use iPhones? Why do they do that? And why does the photography matter enough that people are willing to pay for it and fly someone to somewhere to get a photograph taken? Why does that matter? And really, the truth comes down to that people want to see themselves in the very best light. They don't want to just see them. They don't want to see their mugshot. Right. They want to see a beautiful version of them, because too often times, and it's the Facebook thing, like, everybody gets to see the best version of the person on Facebook. Right. But I think people, when they're having their portrait taken, or when they're going to be having their wedding, they want to make sure that they know that the person who's going to be taking their picture has in their mind the most, their best intention is to take gorgeous pictures of you and to take the right moments. Right. And they've been studied on how to turn someone so that their arms look right. Right. And they've studied on how to find the moment and they've got the experience that they need to be able to manage people and put people in the right frame of mind and make things fun. You can take a picture, but can you make them laugh? Can you make them feel confident about what you're doing? And it all of a sudden it turns to, why does it matter that you have a professional, well-trained photographer at your wedding? The reason it matters is because that person has the ability to deal with situations. It's about the photographer. It's not about his photography as much. It's about the person. Right. Right? Right. But then when it comes to the imagery, I can only go back to, these are heirlooms, and these are moments that will be looked at for hundreds of years. Yeah. I look at pictures of my wife and my own grandparents and great-grandparents. We have a whole wall of historical photographs in our house, and they matter a lot. My grandparents my wife's grandparents came over and stood in front of the wall for almost 45 minutes when they came to dinner one night, and they just told stories. They looked at, that was great grandpa so-and-so, and he had this little corner store and blah, blah, blah. And you can see right there, over there is where that car is, like, my first, and they just told
those images,
stories.
That goes back to what you were saying, because those images were real things that elicited those thoughts and those memories and those feelings.
That's right.
In them. Yeah.
Photographs are real. Yeah. Photographs tell stories. They shout stories. Yeah. You know, they don't just give people ideas to think about like art does. You know, they don't just have people kind of get emotional about something or look at it and go, I don't understand it. You look at a photograph and there's something there. Go to the Museum of Modern Art with, you know, your least artistic friend.
Yeah.
And he will stand in front of a William de Kooning or a Jackson Pollock and say, I don't get it.
Right.
But put him in front of any photograph. I mean, any photograph. You just choose a random photograph in that same museum, and it could be as weird as possible, and he'll say something interesting about it. Because it says something. It shouts at you because it's real. It's not just a fake. It's not just paint on a wall. It says something, and that's why photography is so important. I just was talking to X-Rite about a photograph that I took on the Grand Canyon. And I do a lot of photographs at the Grand Canyon for weddings. And one of the clients that I had there became very close friends, to the point that now I communicate with the bride regularly, and her, you know, I visit them and see her child. And but I have this photograph of her in this beautiful dress, and she's standing on this cliff. And then the groom is kind of below the cliff, kind of on a ledge, and kind of his arms up, and he's kind of way below her and looking up at her, and he's kind of got his head on his, and he's just admiring her, and being a little silly. And I look at that photograph, and it speaks volumes about their relationship, because she's this beautiful, beautiful girl, and she's you know, just kind of vivacious and fun, and he is kind of a nerd, really smart. He's an animal doctor. He's actually an eye surgeon for horses.
Oh my goodness!
Like that's, you know, it's very specialized stuff. And he also does eye surgery on like lions, at museums and stuff like that.
Incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, they became one of my favorite clients, and I would go all over the place and take family pictures for them, and I, you know, would travel. They were very adventurous and fun. But a year after they got married, they had a baby, and then a year after that, he died. The husband.
Oh goodness.
So he had cancer, and there were complications, and so anyway, he's now passed on. And I look at that photograph, and I think that photograph is so telling about their relationship and how much he doted on her.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that he was afraid of heights, deathly afraid of heights, and he's on a cliff.
For her.
And he did it because he wanted to do something that he was afraid of.
Yeah.
Right? And he said about his wedding, he said, you know, Jared, the whole time we were being married, I'm on a cliff and I didn't care. It was fine. I wasn't scared at all because he was in the middle of that wedding. Right? Otherwise, at all the other points in his life, he was afraid of heights. But when he was with her getting married, didn't matter. And this photograph, I look at it and I'm like, man, you look at that photograph and understand that story, and especially the people who do understand the story about him, and that speaks volumes. And that's why it matters that we, you know, train ourselves to get the right image, to get focused, to be able to pose people. That's why it matters that we know how to expose so that we can get the canyon and them in focus and lit. And that's why it matters that we take our craft seriously. But that's why it matters to our client, because those images tell incredible stories that they're going to remember forever.
I tell you what, you took me on like a roller coaster ride of emotions. I started off like cracking up and thinking this was going to be goofy and hilarious, and in the last few minutes I'm trying not to cry. I really appreciate it. This was awesome. Thank you. So where can people find you?
It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Jared Platt is my name, and pretty much that's everything. Facebook, Jared Platt. Twitter, Jared Platt. Insta, Jared Platt.
The .com?
Yeah, just JAREDPLATT.
That's all.
That's it. Just search that. You'll find me. There's one other person in the world named Jared Platt. He was a wrestler.
Yeah.
Like a WWF type wrestler or whatever.
You.
Not me. And he also died recently. So You'll see like obituaries of Jared
Oh,
Platt.
if
That's not
someone
me.
Googles you, yeah, right.
Yeah, if someone Googles Jared Platt, you'll see an obituary for a Jared Platt. I'm still alive.
That's not you. Okay.
I'm not the wrestler.
Thank you for your perspective. This was, I'm gonna think a lot about this. I feel like going to a museum myself now, but I want to be by myself. I don't want anybody else to be there with me. And I just want to look at photographs for a while.
I love photographic museums. I can't get enough of them. They're amazing. They're just so much fun to be in.
Well, I feel compelled to do that myself. Thanks for doing this. I know this is a really busy time
My
at a
pleasure.
convention like this, and your time is valuable, and I appreciate that you gave me some.
Yeah, and thanks for putting this together. And above all, I have to thank the White House is my favorite.
Oh,
you
good.
guys, I mean, you got to have
Good to
people
hear.
that support.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that you choose wisely the people that you use to support
Yeah.
your photography.
Yes, sir.
And it matters that my images look the way I intend them to look.
Yeah.
So it's great that White House produces exactly what I see on my screen.
Thanks for saying so.
Yeah.
We try very, very hard.
It's great.
Have a good one, brother. Until next time.
You too.